Are you on edge? We live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of the Edge of Everyday podcast, which drops bi-monthly on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and tough talk about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. Real talk with real people that sparks provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe. Sandra Bargman, on the edge of every day. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome to the Edge of Everyday, streaming on your favorite podcast platforms and at maximizeyou.life. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, the Edge of Everyday is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times, and we cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult. Silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both, and I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same, and that I fully believe can help to change the world. So, thanks again for tuning in. Today is May 15th, and we just celebrated Mother's Day here in the US. And this special episode is dedicated to mothers. While Mother's Day is now a global event, here in the US, it originated from the efforts of Anna Jarvis, who, after her mother's death, in 1905, campaigned to establish a national holiday honoring mothers. Inspired by her mother's activism and efforts to teach women about childcare, Anna Jarvis envisioned a day to recognize the sacrifices mothers made for their children. Anne Reeves Jarvis, Anna's mother, was a social activist known for her work in promoting solidarity and health education among women, especially in her hometown of Grafton, West Virginia. Following her mother's death, Anna Jarvis dedicated her life to creating a holiday that would honor mothers' contributions. In 1908, Anna Jarvis organized the first official Mother's Day celebration at her mother's church in Grafton, West Virginia, and also in a department store in Philadelphia. Anna's campaign gained momentum, and by 1912, many states and towns had adopted Mother's Day as an annual holiday. President Woodrow Wilson officially proclaimed Mother's Day a national holiday in 1914 to be celebrated on the second Sunday in May. Today, we are live in the Hive with my special guests, three women I adore, to talk about and to honor the wonderful complexities and paradoxes of motherhood, the complicated mother-daughter relationship, caregiving a parent, the joy of having children, the choice to not have children, and the mentoring and nurturing of young people. So without further ado, it is time to introduce our guests. Meg Flather is a two-time Bistro Award winner and a four-time Manhattan Association of Cabaret and Clubs, MAC, award winner. Meg has released 8 CDs of her original music, all of which are available on Apple Music. Meg has also authored 2 books that are now available on Amazon: Home Shopping Diva, Lessons, Lyrics, and Lipstick, and Hold On Tight, A Love Story. Her one-woman musical, Hold On Tight, partners her original songs and stories from her book of the same name about caring for a parent with dementia, for which she received the award for Best Storytelling Show from the United Solo Theater Festival. Anne Kittredge is keenly aware of the chapters she has lived. In Chapter 1, she enjoyed working on and off Broadway, on TV, in concert halls, and regional theaters nationwide. Chapter 2 was spent as a parent advocate and leader in the New York City Public School System, taking time off from pursuing her career to raise her children. In Chapter 3, Anne returned to performing and immersed herself in the cabaret world, where she has won multiple awards, including a 2025 Bistro for her album Romantic Notions, and was also chosen as a top 5 album of 2024 by the Broadway Radio Show. Harriet Shugarman is one of the leading voices in the global parent climate movement, the founder of Climate Mama, and the award-winning author of How to Talk to Your Kids About Climate, Turning Angst into Action. Harriet is the chair of the Advisory Council for Our Kids Climate, an anchor organization connecting national and grassroots groups from more than 50 countries, working on intergenerational organizing and engagement strategies. Harriet is a mentor and leader with the Climate Reality Project and the recipient of the prestigious Climate Reality Alfredo Circus Memorial Green Ring Award. The full bio of these impressive ladies that I'm thrilled to call friend will be in my show notes, along with links to their websites and social media. Welcome, ladies.
Howdy doody.
Yay. Yay.
This is so great. I'm so thrilled, listeners. This is the first time we're doing this many people on one podcast, so bear with us. We're going to try to keep this somewhat organized, but we may go off the rails, and you know what? It's going to be fantastic too. So welcome again, ladies.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yay. It's so great to have you here for this special episode about all things motherhood. I like to start by telling my listeners how I know each of my guests. So I will start with the person I've known the longest is Anne Kittredge. My dear friend.
So honored by that.
I love you. Anne is like family, and she and I went to college together.
Wow.
Yes, in Pittsburgh, PA. Oh my God. We went to Carnegie Mellon University. Oh my God. We did all that and that down there in Pittsburgh, down it. For those of you listening, that's Pittsburghese. A little lesson in Pittsburghese. Yes. So yeah, Anne and I have shared many stories and stages and all things friendship and motherhood for you. Now, I know Anne knows Meg. She's known Meg longer than I've known Meg. I met Meg in the cabaret community, and I have had Meg on the show talking about her glorious show, Hold On Tight, A Love Story, which she has done here at my salon space in my reimagined garage, The Plum, and to standing ovation. And your show is extraordinary, and Meg is a leading light, as is Anne, in the cabaret community. It's glorious to have you both.
Oh.
Harriet, I know from Climate Reality.
Yes.
She was my mentor and fearless leader when I decided in 2017 to go back to Pittsburgh. And I chose
I forgot about that.
to go back on purpose, so I could go back and kind of tool around Pittsburgh, see my old haunts and such. and Harriet was my mentor and leader, and I got to witness you receive that award when I was a part of the climate change reality training with Al Gore. It was just so glorious.
It was a special time.
It
Thank
was,
you. I'm,
well,
yeah.
and I've also had Harriet on the show. And I want to, in front of everyone, invite you back for an episode talking about what's going on in climate change here and the budget here in New York and all those things. I'd love to have you back for a special climate change. So you're on the spot in
That
front
would
of
be
us.
wonderful. I would love to come back and talk about all those things. Yes.
Thank you, thank you. So again, my enormous thanks to all of you for joining me here on the Edge of Everyday podcast. So the first question that I always ask all of my guests now, I wasn't probably doing it with you when you were on Harriet, but I just so love, it's such a revelatory question because people go off in so many directions when they think about it. It's what identity do you lead with? But I decided for this episode, because it's about mothers, as just we're tossing it out into the wind. What identity do you think that your mother led with? Meg.
Nurse midwife. She worked so hard for that. Speaking of Pittsburgh, her father was from Pittsburgh, Henry Fulton Davis, and had to drop out of school in the 8th grade and was a self-made, self-taught man, taught himself to play Chopin. You know, he was a very brilliant man, but he did not let her go to college, and she never got over it. And her mother, who attended Vassar, one of the first graduating classes of Vassar, begged her husband to let Rebecca go to college. And my mother spent her entire life adoring her father and proving him wrong. So she went to nursing school, and she wanted to go to an undergrad, wanted a liberal arts degree. She wanted to be a writer, a journalist. So she took nursing as far as she could. And then in her 50s, when we moved to New York, she went to nurse midwifery school and became one of the top mentors of midwives and one of the top midwives, and chose to work in the poorest public hospitals and delivered over 6,000 babies and worked until she was 77 years old, full time, 40, 50 hours a week, taking the 4 train to Bushwick, Brooklyn every day. So even though she loved being a mother and a grandmother and a partner, she was very in love with my father. I think that nurse midwife on her tombstone, I made sure that was nice and big because
Beautiful.
that was all hers.
Yeah. Oh, I feel, and the profound joy. Yeah, you can feel that. It's palpable. How about you, Anne? What identity do you think your mother led with?
This is so easy. Really, duty.
Mm.
Her life was all about duty. And really it wasn't about being happy. It wasn't about, it was about what is my duty at every moment, her duty as a mother, her duty as a wife, her duty as a nurse, because she was a nurse also, her duty as a sister. She was 100% duty oriented. And I think I have translated that into a healthier perspective, which is creating value. That's my driving force, is creating value, because that's joyful. There's something really joyful about it. Now, my mother was an effervescent, just beautiful person, but really her goal was never to be happy. It was to fulfill her duties.
Yeah, that makes me think of, well, my own mother certainly had that, but I can so think of my grandmothers who really spoke in those terms very openly. I mean, it wasn't, just it was who you were as a woman.
It was generational.
Yeah,
It was
totally generational.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. How about you, Harriet? What identity do you think that your mother chose to lead with in the world?
Yeah, I think, and many similarities, duty comes to mind, but I think tradition. I grew up, and my mother grew up in Western Canada, and her she lost her father when she was young, and her mother came over from Europe at a young age, and she was the only daughter and was raised to follow the rules that my grandmother set. And she was expected and filled this role of getting married at a young age and having children and supporting my father and supporting me and my brothers, and really sort of stayed in that mold. And even she'll be 87 this summer, my mom, and still lives in Alberta. And now she's a grandmother. But, that was who her identity was, and who I think my grandmother was hard in that way. And my mom stayed in that role and in that place. And for better or for worse, it's interesting to think about it. And I've been thinking about it, Sandra, more, for our discussion today, and where my mom's at in her life at the moment. She's getting more forgetful, and life is, lots of her friends aren't there anymore. And yet that's what makes her happy too, is talking to me and her grandchildren. Her children is still the focus of her life.
Oh. Thank you, ladies. Well, it's I want you to tell me about your relationship more deeply. But before I get into that, I do want to honor that it's Mother's Day and ask, and some of this information can continue to come out. You've shared a bit about your relationship with your mothers already. Traditions and or rituals that you shared with your mother, that your families growing up did, or that you do presently, the two of you who have children now. What is your relationship to Mother's Day rituals and or traditions? Anne, let's start with you.
Well, I had a couple of things with my mother. First of all, I would send her a gift on my birthday, because I was like, you did the work.
That's so true.
I don't get it,
Nice.
but you did the work. So I always sent her a gift. And then in her older years, certainly after my father died, I would call her at midnight on New Year's Eve. And it's probably the only night of her year that she stayed up to answer the phone. And, and it would only be a few seconds, but it was just, hey, Mom, it's a new year. Happy New Year. She always expected it. So I would have to say that those were, and then, no, that's more. No, yeah, those are probably the two very exclusive to her.
Oh, I love that. How about you, Meg?
Well, Mother's Day, my mom and my dad were so practical, and we're like, save your money, save your money. And my father,
Wait, who spoke like that? Your father?
my father with his Boston accent, save your money. And because she worked so hard, she never took Mother's Day off. So for her to have Christmas off or Thanksgiving off, she worked all the other holidays. But I think as children, it meant a lot to her, all those homemade cards that we'd make at school, and those gifts that we'd make at school. She really loved being a mother, and it wasn't easy for her to be a mother because her firstborn child was quite mentally ill in a time where diagnoses took forever. In my sister's case, maybe 50 years to get it right, what is going on. But so my mother knew how to make magic. She was quite a creative being. She could sew costumes. Christmas would be over the top with decoration, and she made our stockings, and the gifts were so perfectly wrapped and thought out. And she was kind of shy somehow. She was a very animated leader in her profession, and she was a wonderful listener and a wonderful counselor. Everybody loved talking to my mom because she would really zone in. But I always found her a little shy. So the way she would show her intimacy, her feelings, her affection was through the way she wrapped a gift and the way she wrote a card. So I would say, especially when I was going through my separation and my divorce, I got some spectacular cards in the mail.
Oh,
And she
sweet.
cut out little articles about, strong, independent women.
I love that.
So she was, so I would say the way she led was sort of a tasteful, sort of old-fashioned reserve. And then through the way she made things, you would feel all the feelings that you would want to feel.
Well, she didn't.
Of course, until she got dementia, then a lot of things changed. But
Right.
yeah.
So she didn't really you didn't get to enjoy specifically necessarily she didn't allow any traditional sort of Mother's Day things. Just it was more.
Save your money.
Got it.
We
Yes.
were all adults. This is what we did. But what was fun is when my parents were very much still alive, we would meet for dinner on Sunday night, on Mother's Day night, and
That's great.
And that's what we would do. We would have dinner, but not they were snobby about it. They were like, my father always said, "Oh, it's a Hallmark holiday. Save your money." But I think deep down they loved that there was a reason for us to get.
Well, even Ann Jarvis, who started it, got plugged into the commercialism of Mother's Day. So I think everyone feels that a little bit. How about you, Harriet? Did you have any Mother's Day traditions in your family?
When I was growing up, same, the cards, and my father would send her amazing flowers, but then she was on her own, for Mother's Day. It was her day to do something. So it wasn't our day to do something
I
with
have to
her.
admit, I've done that as a mother.
And then I left Alberta when I was 18, and came back and forth, but I wasn't often there on Mother's Day. So we had calls and cards, but I would always go back to Alberta in July for her birthday, and spend time there with her, and that was our time together. And I've done that every year of my life except for 1 year I was traveling, and 1 year with COVID when I couldn't go to Canada. So we've always spent her birthday, and that's been our mother-daughter weeks that we spent together. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, for me, I realize I also didn't do the identity question. For me, my mother was born in May. And so often kind of Mother's Day and her birthday got lumped together, like Christmas. I have friends who have birthdays close to Christmas or some other holiday, and they're all like, my birthday got combined with this holiday. And I often would ask my mom, do you mind not getting it all lumped together? And of course she didn't, because she was such a glorious mother. But I think the identity that my mother led with was teacher. She came on that side of the family, a long lineage of teachers. And I think that I walk in the world with that essence as well, more probably than an artist. I walk through the world with the teacher essence that I pulled from that lineage. She was a very proud teacher and had the patience of a saint. But in terms of our rituals with my mother, I don't have memories of like we did fun things when like we didn't take her breakfast in bed. We just didn't do that. I don't have recollection of doing that. But we would celebrate later in life and go to brunches and things. But it's interesting, the first year after her death, I started a ritual for Mother's Day that I've continued since. Sometimes it happens on her birthday, but more often it happens on Mother's Day. And the first Mother's Day in the year of the firsts after her death, I decided to plant a plant in her honor in my yard, and to honor her life. And this first one was a bleeding heart. And it just really spoke to me, of course, because I had just been to a card store and looked at cards that said Happy Mother's Day. I was a weepy mess right there in the card store. Went straight to buy a plant, and bleeding heart was perfect. And I was out in the yard planting it, and I heard the phone ring. And of course, this is before I had a cell phone. And I went inside to our house and I picked up the phone, and it was a girlfriend of mine, and I was crying and just weeping. She knew that it would be a rough day for me because it was the first Mother's Day. And how you doing? Sweep in. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I said, I just planted a bleeding heart in Mom's honor. And she goes, well, I don't know. She's from the city. Of course, she's a girlfriend of mine from the city. She said, I don't know what a bleeding heart is. And I started to say, well, it's not really a flower. It's more like a flowering bush. And she, knowing that I say this all the time, spit out to me in that conversation while I'm weeping, goes, that's what my last date said. And of course, I went from weeping to screaming with laughter. And I was like, thank you. I can never look at a bleeding heart and not think of my mother
Oh my God.
and that it's a flowering bush.
I think that's the next podcast title.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Bleeding
God.
hearts.
Bleeding hearts, flowering bushes. That's just what my last date said. Oh, it was so perfect.
gosh.
So every single year when I plan something, I think of that with great joy. Oh, God. Oh, laughter, the healing power of laughter. Okay, so let's dive in maybe a little bit more about your relationship with your mothers and how potentially, consciously or unconsciously, this relationship influenced your dreams and or aspirations. Harriet, let's start with you.
Growing up, I was the eldest of three, and I always wanted to travel and get away from where I grew up because my mom had done that when she was 18, and she kept this big scrapbook of the amazing places she went to. She went to Europe from Western Canada, and so it was a very big trip at that point in her life. And I grew up knowing I was going to do that when I finished high school and worked, and she encouraged me to do that and told me at that time every dollar I would make, she would make sure that they gave me $1 and to match that. And I ended up having a life through my work of traveling the world and working with people around the world. And even though my mother then never left, she went on some trips here and there, but never lived elsewhere. I think that was a dream that she fulfilled to a point, but then couldn't take it the next step. And so I felt in some ways I got to do that for her. And that was, again, now, even when I see her many, many years later, we bring out that scrapbook every once in a while, and she tells me the amazing stories of the people that she met. So it meant so much to her. So we have that. But growing up, we weren't, and I think just listening to Megan Ann and you, how close your relationship with your mothers were, or I imagine I had a closer relationship with my father. My mom and I fought. She didn't like the guy I was dating when I, was in high school. Then I ended up dating him for 7 years because she didn't like him, and we fought a lot. And it took me having my children, I think, to find my way back to her and to understand her better, and to be able to just let some of those, buttons that we push for each other, to stop pushing them. It took quite a few years, though. Yeah,
That's beautiful. I think my sister experienced much of that, and it took the death of my mother for me to repair my relationship with my father. Not that we had a hard one, but it wasn't the same as with my mom. So it's interesting going through some major event to heal that parental experience. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Harriet. How about you, Anne?
Well, when I was young, my mother was kind of a silent influence on me. Similar to Harriet, actually, I was the apple of my father's eye. And he pretty much, took care of my emotional needs and things like that as a child. And, I used to avoid this conversation for so many years because it always sounded like, oh, pity me. But now that I'm so much older, I realize that it's not about that. It's something that so many families have to deal with, which is generational trauma. And, long story short, my oldest sister accidentally drowned when she was 3 years old. And exactly 3 years later, after my mother had 2 other boys ahead of me, I was born on the day she died. And I always knew that my mother loved me. I always knew that. But she really struggled with, she had the duty of a mother. She definitely loved me, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't much of a relationship when we were young. And I didn't really notice it because I had my father. My father, one parent, and my father told me this once. He didn't say this about my mother. I'm understanding this now, but he did tell me once that when I was born, he didn't know if he could let go. He didn't know if he could be vulnerable and love me after having lost their daughter. But then he did, right? And I'm not sure my mother was ever able to go there. You know what I mean? And this is common. This is a common thing, much more common than you think. But yeah, I was raised Catholic. I'm Buddhist now, but I was raised Catholic, and I had to go to church on my birthday for my sister. You know what I mean? It's like when you're 6 years old, it's like, really? I don't really care. I never met her,
Oh my.
And, and of course, when I had children and they were 3 years old, I didn't take my eyes off them. I was like, how on earth did my parents, how are they even functioning?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you recover from that? And I think that relatively speaking, they did, I mean, so I have to say that my relationship with my mother didn't start really until about 20 years ago, when she really disappointed me. I needed help. My husband was in the hospital and I needed help with the kids, and she just wouldn't come, and it wasn't a good reason. And I was really upset. And so I decided that I needed to grieve the loss of my mother while she was still alive. And I was really angry at first, so I didn't talk to her for months. And I very actively did this because I'm a spiritual person, so I was really working it, and it took me a couple of years. But I finally got to the point where I could see her as the beautiful, loving woman that she was, that was her essence, without any expectation of her being able to be my mother. And so when she, got Alzheimer's and stuff like that, it was so easy. Our relationship was so simple because for years I had already let go of any responsibility for her, right? And so it was an opportunity for me to so value the pure beauty of her soul, without resentment of anything. I mean, I really had let it all go. And she did something really, really amazing for me. The night before she died, we had been warned that she was going to die within days. The night before she died, she was living with me, and my children and my husband, we went into her room. We'd go in all the time, but rarely did we all go in together. And we went all together this night. And got into bed with her and I was holding her, and I had made a mixtape for her of her favorite songs, and we're playing those and stuff. And at one point while I was holding her, she groaned and she moved a little bit. And I thought, oh no, I'm hurting her. You know, I don't want to hurt her, right? And I'm thinking, should I get out of bed? But at the same time, I'm thinking, but she's dying, and I would think you'd want to be held, right? So I kind of just waited, and then she stopped, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay with her. And I stayed with her for a while. And then she died the next day. And for months, I thought about that moment, thinking, you know, did I hurt her? What was that? You know, what was that moment? I hope I didn't hurt her. You know, and then my daughter comes up to me. You know, she waited because the beginning, you're just too, you're grieving. She came up to me and she said, you should see this video that I took that night. The video is less than 2 minutes long. We were in there for a long time. It's less than 2 minutes long. She just happened to turn the camera on when this moment happened. And my mother was not hurting. My mother was trying to hold me. So, you know, I can say all I want about, you know, my mother wasn't really my mother, but look, that's a mother, right?
Oh, Anne, thank you for sharing that story. Wow. It's a remarkable thing to be with a dying parent and to witness. I had my own moment with my mother, to witness how they share who they are in such surprising, unexpected ways in which you'd never seen them be, or at least you hadn't caught it. And you could feel it yeah, wow. What a story. Thank you, Anne. Cheers to your mama.
Yes.
Love and blessings to your mama. Meg, how about you?
Wow.
Yeah.
That was exquisite. What's interesting is my relationship with my mom feels very much like we made an agreement somewhere up there.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, because I just felt like she went, come down now. I need one more, you know, because she had two beautiful daughters and a son, and they were living overseas in the Philippines. My father was the director of the Philippines Peace Corps under Kennedy. And I was this love child that they had, because life in the Philippines in the 60s was sexy. They lived in the tropics, and my mom had all these caregivers living with them, cooking, cleaning, babysitting, and they were doing great things with the volunteers. They were very excited because the Peace Corps had just begun. And so they went, my parents were invited to a wonderful house in the country, and they were guests in a guest room. I'm just going to say it. And my father would tell the story, your mother raped me.
Oh, jeez.
He had such a great sense of humor. She was like, now, just really fast, just right now. And so I was conceived. And what was really great is she got the birth experience that she wanted in the Philippines. She got a natural childbirth experience. And all three of the other babies were very 50s, forceps deliveries. I think two of them were on the Navy base because my father was a Navy pilot, where she was like knocked out and babies were pulled out. And so she wasn't as involved in her birth experience. And that's what planted the seed for her to become a midwife.
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
And she demanded that I was in the room with her. She had gotten this, wicker basket that she made into a crib. And she just said, no, the baby will stay here. And that she was fairly successful at nursing me. And so we bonded. We bonded in a way that I don't think my other three siblings had the opportunity to, just because of the way things were done. with women in birth. And also my first 5 years overseas, she and my dad were just on fire. They were just having the time of their life, doing great things, building clinics, schools, teaching people how to farm. It was just, and then there was all this child support. And the women that cared for me would put me on their backs and they'd play their music. And I'd be there all day long with sarongs, keeping me on their backs. So those early years were really intimate, strangely, because she was just thrilled that my dad was happy. So much of that bond, because they met at 14, was if he's good, I'm good. And he had a restless spirit. And so when we came back to the States, when I was about 5, everything had changed. My father left the Peace Corps. It was very abrupt. And we found ourselves in the suburbs of Massachusetts. And my mom went back to work big time as a nurse. And I felt like I kind of lost her a little bit. I always knew I had that connection because we were so bonded, overseas. But I also knew to kind of find her. I would crawl into bed with her. I would, hold her hand. I would demand to be in the cart at the supermarket. And I knew how much she wanted me. I knew how much, how intimate we truly were. And I was the baby of 4 and a lot was going on. So I feel like my entire relationship with her was this quiet understanding that I was so wanted and so loved, that we really got on. I loved just being in the car with her. I loved being in the supermarket with her. I loved cleaning the bathroom with her. She was just, it was a chemical relationship that we had. It was very much a chemical relationship. It wasn't always about what we talked about. It wasn't about how much time we spent. I don't have memories of her playing with me. I have memories of her being so busy, juggling, going to school at night, nursing by day, 4 kids, worrying about my dad. Is he happy in his job? And because all he wanted to do was save the world. And when we went back to Massachusetts, he had to get a job, go to be corporate and all that. It was still nonprofit. He was always in nonprofit, but he was happiest living abroad,
Yeah.
So I always felt her and I always felt close to her. But I definitely needed to do a lot of work on the relationship in my 20s and my 30s in therapy, because I realized I had adopted the way I pleased her was not working in friendships. It wasn't working in intimate relationships. It wasn't working as an artist. There was always something in the way because I had to be happy for her. I always figured I'm going to be the happy one. So if I'm the happy one, and it worked, she called me sunshine. I felt like we had a little special thing that nobody else had, but I had to work very hard to grow a woman of myself and give myself permission to not be a sunshine. And in a lot of ways, my divorce was the beginning of my mom and I really like letting me be dark, letting me be depressed, letting me be sad, not having it fixed in a phone call, knowing I was going to be sad for a while, struggling in my 6th floor walk-up studio apartment with 2 cats. And then, of course, but she was always my fiercest champion. And
I love this.
She gave me music. I mean, she gave me music. She gave me musical theater. She came to everything I ever did. I could do no wrong. And she came to some pretty lousy shows.
And some good ones.
But I remember the first thing my therapist said to me when I really found the right therapist. I said, I'm just so scared. I don't want to be angry at her here. I don't want to have those feelings here.
Why?
I was so scared that that's all it was going to be. And the therapist, God bless Lana Shah Levine, she gave me my mother. She said, if you have those feelings here, I promise you, when you go home again, you will have the relationship with your mother that you dream of. And it's very much like Anne. When I went home again, it was adult to adult. It was human to human. It was soul to soul. It wasn't so much mother-daughter. Yeah. It was the agreement that we made in the Starry world.
Yeah,
I had to work on the mother-daughter stuff a lot to get that.
That's and it's so fascinating to hear you talk about this sense of not adoring, knowing that you have this really close relationship, but not allowing yourself to really be who you are. And I experienced that a little bit with my mom too. That sort of the cheerleader for I was, I was a preemie. I popped out of the womb 2 months early.
Okay, that's incredible.
Totally. Totally. Like our joke in the family was like, if you had gone to term, how tall would you be? No.
Because you're the most beautiful but very Amazonish woman. You're the most Amazonish woman I know.
Goddess. Goddess.
Hey,
Well, I'll
goddess,
tell you what, I
you
was
are.
not a cute baby. I was a little Martian. I was so not cute. I had these big, huge eyes and this little squishy, like little apple head. But yeah, it was a really difficult birth. I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. I was dry and early, and I think that bonded us in a way, like Meg, that there was a sense of that I needed my mother's attention, and she was the uber mother, and she grabbed onto that. I think that's throughout I've shared this with Meg and Anne, but Harriet, my mother and I were very, very bonded. We did we were so close that a filmmaker friend of mine asked us to do a documentary based on our very close relationship. And which you can imagine when my mother passed away, to have that, how extraordinary that was. And in fact, I played it in the performance that Meg did at the Plum, potent evening. And my mother had the quintessential psychic moment, and this is going to usher in, and maybe Harriet, do you still have your father, Harriet?
No, he passed away 10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so my next question would be directed particularly to your father, and also because you were closer to him, in quotes. But my mother asked me potently while she was dying of cancer, when I went into my first year of seminary, to be the minister at her funeral.
Wow, that's such an ask.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's the honor and the overwhelming psychic obligation. Like talk about an edge of every day. It's like so beautiful and so difficult. Yes, and of course I agreed, and did it. Was the minister of the event and the grieving daughter, and it was so difficult. But I'll never forget the day, and I was with my mother when she passed. I was literally holding her hands, and I saw when she took her last. My father and I were with her. She took her last breath, her last gasp, and we knew the moment had happened. And her arms came up after her last gasp. They crossed over her chest like this. It was so extraordinary. And the next day, of course, I had to call my sister and her family to come, and they missed their opportunity. She died a good month and a half before they were scheduled to come to see her, because we knew that she was in her last days. But they came, and they weren't allowed to see the body for a variety of cancer reasons. And so I took everyone to the beach to do a ceremony, and I'll never forget walking through this grove of trees to go find a spot to sit everybody down and light some candles that wouldn't get blown out, where we could have some, share and do a great little ritual. And I walked through this grove of trees, and I felt my mother so vastly, enormously. And I felt so unbelievably surprisingly, a release from my mother. That there was this release to be someone that was not bound by any desires or needs or lineage or whatever through that experience. So my question is, did any of you experience anything like that upon the death of your beloved parent?
Well, I can speak to, my mother asked me for decades to sing the Ave Maria at her funeral. And I didn't. I did have it played. I didn't have anyone else sing it because, we all are like this, right? But I have sung it practically every wedding and funeral in my family and my extended family. And it's usually the Ave Maria. And so, and I didn't, and I'll tell you why, because it was a real decision. I decided that now that she was dead, her reality was different. And I can't know what that is. None of us can, but we believe what we believe because it serves us, right? And so I believed that she would understand that it was more important for me to give myself permission to grieve than to vocalize the morning of her funeral. And I don't feel guilty about it. I mean, I'm like, she has to understand on a different level if she has any consciousness, right? That it's not that I'm not singing because I don't love her. It's for the opposite reason. It's because I did love her. And please don't make me perform,
Yeah.
Wow.
Totally understand. How about you, Harriet?
Yeah, no, I am waiting for my father to come back and knock on the door. And I've had a couple, I'll share in a minute, but just in lead up, my father was like the marble man and he could do everything and taught me how to, like remove a toilet and fix the, leaky taps and how to shoot a gun and he taught me all these things. And my mom was always there. And he smoked like the marble man, 2 packs of cigarettes a day and got throat cancer and then lung cancer and had an awful last year where he had to get a trach, and he loved to talk and tell stories and couldn't talk. And my mom was there to take care of him in this really awful but my dad did it with such grace and because for him not to be able to speak, he wrote so many notes and to remain positive even though there was only one outcome. And my mom, like from cleaning his tray to helping him with everything, like she was so strong for him and he for us. And then in the end, when he couldn't die, it was 10 days where he was it was time to go, but he stayed there, I think, so that my brothers and I and my mom stayed in a room and told stories. And we had this really special time, the 5 of us bonding around his death until he died. And so, but then it just felt empty. And I had one experience, a few years ago. I'm a little claustrophobic, and I had to have go into one of those machines, an MRI, and I was really not happy to be there, and I felt him holding my hand. I felt that he knew how worried I was, and he was there. And that's, the one and only. I have pictures in my office of the wall of my dad, and I think of him every day. But feeling, that feeling you had where I haven't had that in that same way.
Well, it makes me wonder if, I don't know, maybe you might feel that for whatever, even not being as close with your mom as your father. Who knows?
Yeah.
You may. I just found it a strange release of the needs and the lineage and so this will be my next question after we hear from Meg. The next question being, what do you feel that you was the greatest gift that you received from your mother, from that side of your female lineage? So Meg, did you feel that about?
Well, I was so lucky because she let me take care of her. She was so strong and she was so stubborn and she was so independent and so proud. We lost my father first, and Harriet, it was so hard. He was such a pillar of everything. And my mom was such a strong widow. She just doubled down, went right to work, volunteered for every shift, and then went to bed. That's how she grieved my father. And then, but when she started showing signs of dementia, well, actually, the way we grieved my father together, that we were playmates. So we went to a lot of shows, a lot of movies, a lot of plays. She came to every damn gig. She'd enter like Dolly Levi and all these folk clubs in the East Village, and she'd walk in, you know. I mean, they were dives, but she'd come to my show. So we really bonded because we cared for my father together. We did shifts, and because my career allowed me to work from their apartment. So she needed to go to the hospital. She needed to deliver babies and be around babies. And she did the night shift, and I was his day shift. And it was a very quick, unfortunate battle with cancer, just 9 months and he was gone. But we were a little trio together. And so when it was just the two of us being playmates, she was very, very in need of me.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to part one of my very special two-part series, Bleeding Hearts and Mother Stories. It wasn't my intention at the start of this conversation to create 2 episodes, but it became very clear after 75 minutes that we had many more mother stories to share. I am very, very in need of these vulnerable and powerful conversations. I know you are too. Part 2 of this conversation, devoted to all things mother, will drop on June 2nd. As always, thanks for listening.